I'm at Imber Court, home of Metropolitan Police FC from the Southern League Premier Division. I'm usually here several times a season in the camera gantry just behind this camera, covering their league matches. This time, however, I'm here with a rather broader brief, and that's to signpost what the new normal might be as we prepare for the return of non-league football. Whatever happens, the ramifications in terms of revenue, in terms of costs, in terms of separation, and even in terms of viability are substantial. And I'm going to take a look at various aspects of what the return at a ground like Imber Court might mean. Obviously, one of the first areas you're going to have where fans encounter the ground will be on the approach, the turnstiles. And even here, we really don't know yet, and this is based on this being recorded on the 11th of July, just where the DCMS and just where the leagues and the relevant football associations are going to go. Now, it may well be at smaller grounds or at grounds where you've got high numbers of spectators relative to space available, you may actually end up in a situation where tickets are going to have to be sold in advance. Similarly also, you're going to have stewards probably outside the ground ensuring a safe separation of spectators as they approach the turnstile area. And then of course also you're going to have the whole question of, depending on government regulations, depending on social distancing, whether we're going for 2 metres or 1 metre plus as they call it now, it may well be that before they even get as far as the turnstile they're going to have a mask. And then we come to the turnstile area itself. That metal is going to need continuous virucidal cleaning. That grid is almost certainly going to have to be replaced by some kind of perspex screen. And what about payment? Is everyone going to have to move to electronic point of sale? Will clubs have the facility to have a wireless connection to make payments possible? Once again, another step in the new normal. Everything will need to be rethought. Once you enter the ground at Imber Court, the first thing you come to is the famous programme table. Will people be happy about touching paper? How will people pay for the programme? Will coins still be acceptable? And once they're in the ground, will this be perhaps a point at which a temperature check using a infrared thermometer needs to be made? Once again, part of the new normal. Okay, so we've got our fans into the ground. Next step obviously is going to be, how do we actually position them? Now, for a club like the Met, with average crowds, I think before the season came to an abrupt end, of 136 at home, probably less of a problem. And I'll explain why. So the average perimeter of a football pitch all the way around is 320 metres. Now, using the new 1 metre plus government separation guidelines, that means having a gap of 1 fan 1 metre, 1 fan 1 metre will actually allow you to accommodate 160 people around the touchline, regardless of how far the steps go back on the terracing. If it's the old 2 metre guideline, then that still allows you obviously 320 divided by 3, 1 fan 2 metres, allowing 1 metre for each fan for elbow room and the rest. That still gives you a further 106 spaces. So the red tape marks 1 metre, 1 metre for the fan, 1 metre, and so on, all the way around the pitch. And as you can see, on that level of separation, really would feel quite safe in an open air space, especially as a requirement for masks. And I think we have to bear in mind that with fans making a noise and potentially expelling moisture particles and similar from their mouths, I think a mask probably will end up being quite likely, unless the separation distances are greater. And here's how it works in, I should say, here's how it looks in practice. I'm 5'9", and I'm well, shall we say, positioned within a 1 metre gap for my shoulders and arms, and this is the distance that you would actually go right here to this gate before you'd run in to the next fan. And with 2 metres of separation, which is where I am now, the real distance from fan to fan is quite substantial. So here I am, and this is now 2 metres exactly walking to the gate. Once again, that really is a quite substantial level of separation. Now, let's have a look at the situation in seating areas. Met Police have actually got quite a sophisticated main stand. That's it here behind me. And we'll just have a look at the options for separating people in the seating areas and the effect that could have on capacity. So we're in the Des Flanders stand at Imber Court, and here we're illustrating 1 metre of social distancing in the seats. This is the barest minimum, with presumably masks or some similar device in operation as per Her Majesty Government's regulations. Basically, each seat is 50 centimetres wide, so to get 1 metre of separation to the next fan, you have to knock out the next 2 adjacent seats. So put simply, at 1 metre distancing, you're losing 1/3 of your seating capacity, and that assumes the seats are 50 centimetres wide. So we're now in the same part of the stand, but this time the model assumes that the social distancing between the seats is 2 metres. Now the rake, that's the distance between each row vertically, is 95 centimetres. So if you actually have a structure in place where everyone is expected to be 2 metres apart, you don't lose 4 seats, you actually lose 10. So just to put that in perspective, you're basically keeping 1 seat out of 11, whereas before with the 1 metre rule you'd have kept 1 in 5. So for stadia, for venues that have large seating areas, depending on what the government decides to go with, what the DCMS decides to go with, what the Football Association decides to go with, there could be a massive reduction in seating availability. Last but not least, we come to refreshments and to toilets. It's very likely, given social distancing measures, that for the first time male spectators are going to know just how bad it is queuing for a toilet at half time, just like the women already do. Very likely that urinals are going to be taken out of use due to social distancing legislation. Sinks probably as well, and that will mean another potential cost on clubs to rebuild or to remodel toilet facilities, possibly to hire in portable toilet facilities. There's one other issue, and that's behind me here, and that's how are we going to manage queues at things like tea huts? People are going to have to keep their distance, How is payment going to be undertaken? Electronically? Quite possibly. Once again, clubs having to step up, adopt and modify their methods of working. Probably the inauguration of queuing systems like you see in some supermarket delis. Possibly people equipped with, I don't know, loud hailers shouting out numbers that your order is ready. But once again, something else that's going to have to be borne in mind. So you've got two sets of pressures on the clubs. On the one hand, real potential investment in measures to keep the fans safe. At the same time, depending on the average crowds, there's the real risk that spectator numbers are going to have to be moderated, especially in seating areas. So, the DCMS have spoken. It's all looking very, very good. We're waiting to hear something from the FA, but most important of all, the clubs are going to need time to look at how to incorporate this financially, time to get the work done. The next step, I think, where possible, is surely with the associations, with the leagues, probably with the Football Association as well, to look for some kind of trickle-down financing for the work that's going to have to be done. Why? Because all these lower league clubs pulling together can surely negotiate excellent discounts from the suppliers of the services that are going to be necessary, whether it's modifying seating adjustments in stands, whether it's numbering and dividing up terracing, whether it's remodelling toilets, remodelling and updating tea room facilities. Really think it's a time now for associations, leagues and the FA themselves to step up.